Yes, hi. Testing, testing. Can you hear me okay? Yes, hi. Testing, testing. Can you hear me okay? Yes, hi, testing, testing. Mm. Is this okay now?
No, no, the volume. Mic volume. Mic volume. Test, test. How's it online? Good? Awesome. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today in person and for those who are with us online today. My name is Fadi Qafaiti, and I'm the Executive Director of the Jerusalem Fund and Palestine Center here in Washington, D.C. For our dear guests online who are probably not familiar with our organization, the Jerusalem Fund for Education and Community Development is a grassroots 501c3 registered nonprofit that supports communities in Palestine while educating people in the United States on the question of Palestine. All of our events are free and open to the public, and almost all of them are live streamed to a global audience. You can find us online on at Palestine Center on X and at Palestine Center DC on Instagram. We're joined here today for the book launch discussion of Heaven Looks Like Us, Palestinian Poetry. I wish to thank our dear friends at Haymarket Books for publishing this timely and critical anthology and for agreeing to co-sponsor this event with us, with a special appreciation to Sean Larson for all his support with making this book launch possible. For 19 months now, our people in Palestine have been experiencing a second Nakba unfold before our eyes. In Gaza, a genocidal war terrorizes the besieged surviving native population who are being collectively starved and massacred while we watch. And in the occupied West Bank, the largest mobilization of settler expansionism, violence, and murder since 1948 threatens the very existence of Palestinians in Palestine. In Gaza, our people have faced the most brutal forms of blockade under this genocide, being collectively starved by our colonizer for more than 11 weeks now as they expand their extermination campaign across the besieged strip, which is the longest siege in modern political history. Under this mass terror and genocide, upheld by all the imperial powers and passively accepted by our world leaders, we people, we only have poetry to make sense of the catastrophes that we see before us. This is why the colonizer fears the pen as much as the bullet, sometimes if not more, and why they systematically target writers and intellectuals. In this, we're reminded of generations of revolutionary poets and intellectuals who were assassinated by Zionist forces, like Ghassan Kanafani, who's remembered as the commando whose weapon was the ballpoint and whose arena was the newspaper, and the martyred Professor Rifat al-Arir, a contributor to this anthology, who remarked days before his murder that, quote, "The toughest thing I have at home is an expo marker. But if the Israelis invade, I'm going to use that marker to throw it at the Israeli soldiers, even if that is the last thing that I would be able to do," end quote. We must never forget in this Professor Rifat's immortal lines, "If I must die, let it bring hope. If I must die, let it be a tale." Heaven Looks Like Us from from the back blurb is a love letter to Palestinian ancestors, their descendants, and their land, to all anti-colonial and anti-imperialist struggles, to a history that will never be forgotten, and to a future in which there thrives a free Palestine. That's why Palestinians, like other colonized peoples, have stressed poetry and the written verse as a means of resistance against erasure from colonialism, for cultural preservation against an entity that's built on denying their existence, and to reclaim their identity and assert their presence in the face of extermination. Under such occupation and injustice, the poetry of the colonized becomes a weapon against suppressed histories, piercing like a dagger into the colonial narratives and asserting our steadfastness through our language, rhythm, and metaphor against the destructions of their bullets and bombs. As this anthology demonstrates, the poems in this collection reclaim the power of the dispossessed, bridging borders, languages, and generations to forge new conversations around resistance and liberation. By weaving our collective memory and resilience into verse, poetry becomes both a transformative act of defiance as well as a sanctuary for the oppressed. Before turning to our distinguished speakers for the night, I wish to emphasize that the Jerusalem Fund has a deep connection to the anthology Heaven Looks Like Us. For in this anthology are figures who have been intimately involved with our organization over the decades, such as Samih Al-Qasim, who was heavily involved in our early years during the late 70s and 80s, and Zeina Azzam, my predecessor and former executive director, who unfortunately could not be here with us on the night in the flesh, but nonetheless, we're so grateful that she'll be joining us for a virtual reading. Lastly, before we begin, I wish to acknowledge Professor Judith Tucker in the audience, who was a former executive member of our Center for Policy Analysis on Palestine before it evolved into the current space, the Palestine Center. So thank you so much, Professor, for joining us. We'll begin this event with a brief discussion around the anthology from co-editor George Abraham, followed by a poetry reading from their work, in addition to Yusuf Qasmi's The Camp is a Bait for Me. We'll then turn to Zeina Azzam, who will be joining us remotely, to read her poem, as well as the martyred Hiba Abu Nada's Not Just Passing, whose life was stolen from us when she was murdered by Israel in the early days of the genocide. Afterwards, Leena Aboutaleb will then read her poem, and Anis Ghanima's Graves Behind the Window. While it's not a part of the anthology, it's a poem that Leena recently translated. Sharif al-Musa will then take to the podium to read his poem and that of Ghazan poet Hind Juda, who is also not in this anthology, but is a critical work that deserves its reading today. Last but not least, we'll have Fargo Tbakhi read their work, in addition to Ibrahim Nasrallah's Palestinian. I wish to end my opening remarks by noting that the title, Heaven Looks Like Us, derives from one of Fargo's poems, which is why, for one of many reasons, we're honored to have them with us today. I'll be introducing each respective poet between the readings, and then we'll turn to a Q&A session, which our esteemed virtual guests are also welcome to contribute to. All that I ask is that you please silence your phones, and I hope that you're as moved by the readings tonight, poetry tonight as I was while reading them. So with that, I'll turn to co-editor George Abraham. George is a Palestinian-American poet and memoirist who was born on unceded Timucuan lands in Jacksonville, Florida. They're the author of Birthright, which published in 2020 won the Arab American Book Award. They're currently executive director of Mizna and teach at Amherst College. Welcome, George. Please join me in Ella coming up.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Fadi. Thank you to everyone here. And it is I'm just blown away to just be in this building right now. And I just want to spend time with literally every single one of these books on the shelf. And yeah, just processing a lot. Um, I'm gonna begin by reading a little bit from the introduction, which how Noor and I decided to do it. It was really fun working with Noor Hindi, who like I don't know if she's on the interwebs. I don't know where the camera is for the interwebs. Oh yeah, there we go. But it was just so fun because me and Noor are like almost like the opposite people in so many ways. Like we're very, and especially when it comes to working on anthologies, everything that she is really good at, like organizing, structure, like communication, I was like, and flailed at. Then everything that she was like nervous about, i.e., writing the intro, she's like, George, just do this. And then we forced her strong arm turn to writing an end note instead. So like I wrote the intro and she edited, then she wrote the end note and I edited. So we just have this little bookend. I'll read a little bit from my part from the intro. Um, yeah, and I think that Fadi set us up really well, so I'll just dive right in. We are writing from the event horizon of another world. Thus, the times are filled, impossibly, with love. At the center of every poem in this book, regardless of content or form, there is a love story of miraculous proportion. Here's the miracle of Yusuf Ezzeddin Saleh, a poet born in Lid in 1928, who arrived in the US after being displaced twice in 1948 and 1967, whose poems come to us in the form of translations of napkin scribbles and papers inherited by his grandchildren. Here's the miracle of our only anonymous contributor, a Palestinian living within the Zionist entity, brought to us via collaboration with Tariq Dobbs, the loving form of a conversation that holds space for the unsayable from within a regime that forbids words like occupation from being printed. Here's the miracle of Ashraf Fayyad, a Palestinian political prisoner whose poem on the virtues of oil over blood was quoted nearly entirely in the Saudi court case that sentenced him to death. Here's the miracle of his survival despite. Here's the miracle of queer Palestinian southerner Rasha Abdul Hadi, whose poem Finished with the Peace connects to the lineage of gay Iraqi Jewish anti-war poet Siegfried Sassoon. Here's the miracle that interrupts failed notions of peace with the insistence on Palestinian living. Here's the miracle of Najwan Darwish insisting with every breath that we Palestinians remember the Armenians today and every day. Here's the miracle that birthed a response poem from Armenian activist Sophia Armen, who wrote in the middle of a Nakba Day protest a poem that remembers Palestinians back. Here's the miracle of love as entanglement. Here's the miracle of all the Black radical poets who gave so much language to our love and resistance. A love letter to June Jordan from Leena Aboutaleb, a poem from Muhammad Khayder invoking Dion Brand to give language to his Black and Palestinian family histories, a cento from Zeina Azzam comprised entirely of lines from revolutionary women poets. Here's the miracle of every call with Naomi Shihab Nye, who contributed here not just with her poems, but with her loving advice and wisdom and faith in us as editors. Here's the miracle of elder lesbian poet Michaela Cabeney Rain, who, after discussing edits for her queer Tatriz poem together, tied a pink Tatriz bracelet around our wrists. Here's the miracle of our every gathering, how in September 2023, just months before this latest phase of our ongoing Nakba, many of us gathered at the Palestine Rights Conference, how we laughed, read, cried, and loved each other in our aliveness. Here's the miracle of running across an impossibly crowded room to hug Maya Abu al-Hayat for the first time, the miracle of the bird song that is her Arabic. Here's the miracle of bilingual readings with Yahya Ashur, the miracle of living living Ghazan poets. Here's the miracle of living poets older than the Zionist states, like Olivia Elias, who first began publishing at the age of 71. Here's the miracle of Huda Fakhreddin, whose works not only translate Palestinians here, but build such spaces of safe gathering for us against illiterate after settler illiterate institution that spits on our graves. Here's the miracle of our departed beloveds, to whom we owe the entire weight of our poems. Here's the miracle of Murid Barghuti's buttons, of Mahmoud Darwish's horses, of Sami al-Qasim's son. Here's the miracle of Rifat al-Arir's kite and Heba Abu Nada's starlight, of every protest in 2023 giving flight to their words. Here's the miracle of Salma Khadrajayusi, of the Radius of Arab American Writers, of Mizna, of every grassroots literary movement and culture worker built by us and for us, without whom none of these poems would exist. Here, poetry gives us the miracle of language activated beyond mere witness and into withness. We hope our anthology serves as one small step in fostering greater interconnectivity in and beyond our global writing community. We thank our every contributor, wherever you are in the world, for trusting us with your precious words. We encourage every reader to do what you can to fight for Palestinians while we are still living. We are asking you to love us impossibly. And now I'm gonna just read one poem from the anthology. It was really fun ordering the anthology. Like the ordering was very intentional and it's kind of organized. You know, we didn't want to do the silly thing, which was like organizing by alphabetical order of last name or organizing chronology because fuck linear time. And we wanted to do something just more meaningful and putting poems into chapters that are kind of cross-temporal, multilingual, multispatial conversations. Like some of the chapters are around eco poetry, for example. Some of like one of the chapters is around ars poetica and meta poems, meta poesis that like Huda Fakhreddin writes about. Fargo's is the first in that chapter, for example. There's a love poem chapter. I mean, all of these poems are love poems, but there's a love poem chapter. There's a futurity chapter. So it's kind of organized spiritually and thematically more so than anything else. And this poem just completely, like, I remember where I was, like, and when I first read this poem, his editor was the one who sent it to me, Andre, who edits at Poetry London. This is Yusuf M. Kasmia's poem that I just, every time I reread it, I just find something new to fall in love with. And because it's a George Abraham partially edited anthology, there's a long poem in every chapter. Woo! Instead of, because poets love to just prioritize. I love a nice, neat and trim short poem, but I'm like, we need to also allow space for people to be spacious, I guess, and to be to inhabit kind of a different aesthetic mode. And so every chapter also kind of has at least one longer poem kind of cohering around it. And this is the Bait for Time chapter, titled after, you know, kind of cheekily after Yusuf M. Kosmia's The Camp is a Bait for Time. With the shovel, my father reclaims the echo, blow after blow until the wheat wakes. The camp preserves its metaphors in the same way it shields its navel from the scene. Navel, a scar to itself. There, in the time that remains, camps raise their bodies as they raise their absence. If it alludes to anything, it alludes to the inheritance of water. Like her mother, my mother skythes dryness in her dreams. When my grandmother left her village, she died for her mother. My mother's only question is dying in the camp history? To see the camp is to see its metonymies. Only once his olive tree died did my grandfather make himself a walking stick. The proper noun, that is. What names? Names nothing except the name. The camp is a bait for time. Who testifies for who in the camp? To testify is to occupy time verbally. A custodian to itself it is. When survival is pondered by those in the camp, it is necessarily pondered in the future. The camp, a covenant between man and time. When time is killed, time alone can testify to its killing. Where is the mouth apropos the testimony? Can it be that mourning is the camp? The camp is a bait for time. Between consciousness and its face, and with a stick as erect as his old back, he would say, "Leave me to it, leave me to its time." I write the camp as it is suspended in the written. In the actual written, it is not, nor is it in the absolute literality that suspiciously grasps the written. I say, writing, like grasping, germinates the absent. What I write for the disappearing hand, for the solemnity above, for what was a season, or a lapse, for its looming return to life in its form, deformed. I write to testify to my hand, to the limb in me above all else, the suspected fears of the absent. For those who live at the pace of time within the means of a dialect that will come late to their dry throats because of a looming air raid or the imminent death of a passerby, the thoughts that what may wait to be picked off their well-bathed dry bodies. This is living, living as life in the future, as suspected time. The camp is a bait for time. I am not sure if there is one Badawi, nor am I sure if there is life. The camp is also guilty of the name, for it is a secret at birth. It is a camp. In the camp, a tense for the inactive, in the air is benevolently called the future. Is it complicity between time and its offspring, or is it the camp left to its own time? In traces, the subject fights with the subject. For a trace to endure as a trace, a dissolution of all things must ensue. Could writing be a trace? What follows mourning is mourning to the extent that neither the mourned nor the mourner knows who is who. The graver digs to bury and digs to see. Seeing is a cradle to the unseen. To dig is to justify digging with or without a reason. He always digs from the edges. He says, dig not the inside. The edges eat into the inside until no inside remains. When dug, a hole is no longer a hole. Sublimated, revered, and stuffed with its own inners, it becomes a shrine. In death, masks spit out their faces. Rocked by the oncoming feet, they die until another time. Cemeteries in the camp are a discreet acknowledgement of that which is to come, in the sense that he who dies is he who survives time. The camp is a bait for time. In the first person, I see the camp to my eyes to the camp. A camp it will be, the indefinite in the definite, a covenant for the place, for time promised as anniversaries. At every anniversary, my father remembers his face and forgets my mother's. What my father remembers can and cannot be his face. To this day, he reminds me that I fell off his back. In his presence, I await myself to say what must be said. Neither he nor I remember whose language it is we speak. Dying substantiates dying. Straying while dying always grants the gravedigger more time to widen his imagination. Blame not a hand, not knowing its hand. In the camp, people die out of their time, claiming their opposite. Pronounce the camp a place. This is not to say that the camp is other or unique as other. What is said is wholly said for the ruins before and after the place. In principle, the unique lies outside life. Those who cannot see their limbs have not yet been born. In my language, only static is granted the right of birth and a father. Even though waiting is premised on seeing, their eyes never meet. We wait with no eyes. Can the blurriness in a child's eye be the sacred? Can the sacred is nothing but absence, the forbiddance of narration, the forbiddance of quenching one's thirst. I remember with all my might. I remember hands anticipating my fall. I remember, drenched in guilt, marching back to the disaster, to the details of the dead, with strict chronologies and smells. I remember so I am alone, digging in the camp with my father's shovel. I remember my mother ripping out her hair in anticipation of the future. I remember my hand stealing my mother away from my sisters in broad daylight. The camp, the camp is a bait for time. Give it up for Yusuf. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much for that, George. Now, in the next couple of moments, we'll be bringing Zeina Azzam virtually with us. I hope that we don't have any technical difficulties with this. Um, in the meantime, okay, it's gonna take a moment. So in the meantime, I'll go ahead and introduce Zeina Azzam. Zeina Azzam is a Palestinian activist and poet, writer, editor, and community activist. She served as the poet laureate of the city of Alexandria, Virginia, from 2022 to 2025. Her full length poetry collection, Some Things Never Leave You, was published in 2023, and her chapbook, Beina Beina, In Between, in 2021. Since 2015, she has served as a mentor for We Are Not Numbers, a writing program for youth in Gaza, and is currently WAN's poetry editor. Wonderful. We have Zeina. Hi, Zeina. Can you hear us? I'm just introducing you. Um, activist for Palestinian rights for decades and volunteers with Grassroots Alexandria, a local group that advocates for civil rights of vulnerable communities. Again, I did mention in the beginning that Zeina is one of my predecessors and a dear friend. We wish she was with us today in the flesh, but we are equally as grateful to have you online. So thank you so much, Zeina, for joining us. We're honored to have you here with us. Please join me in welcoming Zeina.
Hi, everyone. I'm so delighted to be part of this event tonight. I assume that you hear me, so I'm going to keep going. Um, Forgive me for not joining you in person. I am recovering from ankle surgery earlier this week, and so I'm immobile for a while. But I'm happy to join you on Zoom. I may not stay the whole time, but I will try. So first, a very big thank you to Fadi Qafaiti and the Jerusalem Fund for hosting this reading and this book celebration and for inviting me. How beautiful this book is, Heaven Looks Like Us, published by the wonderful Haymarket Books, and what amazing work George Abraham and Noor Hindi did in gathering all of us in this incredible publication. They've edited it sensitively and meaningfully, and they invoke our original sources of inspiration and hope that we find in the larger diwan of Palestinian poetry, and especially the incredible poets whose shoulders we stand on. We feel and we build together. I love what you said, George, about beyond witness and into withness. And George and Leena and Sharif and Fargo, I'm delighted to be reading with you today. I would like to read two poems, as Fadi mentioned. The first is by the poet from Gaza, Hiba Abu Nada. As you know, she was a novelist, poet, and educator. Her novel called Oxygen is Not for the Dead won the Sharjah Award for Arab Creativity in 2017. She wrote the poem in this anthology on October 10, 2023. She died a martyr, killed in her home in South Gaza by an Israeli raid on October 20, 2023. This was just 10 days after she wrote the poem. She was 32 years old. Hiba Abu Nada had earned a BA and an MA in biochemistry and clinical nutrition. So she was a scientist, and she also had this way of looking profoundly at our human condition, at war and loss, with a kind of beautiful yet poignant optimism and compassion. And I think this is why I love this poem by hers, which is called Not Just Passing. And it's in this anthology. The poem was translated from the Arabic by Huda Fakhreddin, who is Associate Professor of Arabic Literature at the University of Pennsylvania. Fakhreddin is a writer, translator, and the author of several scholarly works. Not Just Passing by Hiba Abu Nada. Yesterday, a star said to the little light in my heart, "We are not just transients passing. Do not die. Beneath this glow, some wanderers go on walking. You were first created out of love, so carry nothing but love to those who are trembling. One day, all gardens sprouted from our names, from what remained of hearts yearning. And since it came of age, this ancient language has taught us how to heal others with our longing, how to be a heavenly scent, to relax their tightening lungs, a welcome sigh, a gasp of oxygen. Softly we pass over wounds like purposeful gauze, a hint of relief, an aspirin. Oh, little light in me, don't die, even if all the galaxies of the world close in. Oh, little light in me, say, enter my heart in peace. All of you, come in. I love that this poem is actually the very first poem of the anthology. And now I'll read my own poem in the anthology. I am so honored to be included in this wonderful collection. Let me give you a brief background to the poem because it actually involves the Jerusalem Fund. So in early 2020, Gallery Al-Quds of the Jerusalem Fund, at that time under the direction of the curator Dagmar Painter, it held its 100th exhibition at the gallery. And Dagmar put forward a theme for all the artists, and it was art is not optional. So, although most of the entries in the exhibition were visual art, she asked me and another poet to write poems as well. So, this is the poem that I wrote for that particular exhibition. In this poem, I wanted to feature and draw inspiration from some of the different arts in Palestine. Our arts are such a fundamental part of who we are, of our identity as Palestinians. The first stanza starts with the cobalt blue vases and pottery we love, and then especially the magnificent Palestinian tatreez that includes patterns named from nature like cypress trees and tall palms and a Bethlehem moon. Of course, you all know the important figures that I will mention in this poem, like noted artist Kamal Bullata, poets Naomi Shihab Nye, and our major Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, and lastly, the beautiful vocalist Amal Murqos, who lives in the Galilee and sings so many songs based on Palestinian heritage, including poems by Darwish. So here's my poem. It's titled Palestine, Art in Our Breath. We need bright vines on a blue vase, embroidered cypress trees to climb, to embrace a Bethlehem moon, sit in the shade of tall palms stitched tenderly with our ancestors' dreams, like Kamal Bullata's light-filled landscapes, Arabic words mirroring longing and hope. There is a hunger to stretch our aching arms, fly home toward Jerusalem, where Naomi Shihab Nye's Sitti Khadra points to pockets, sees beyond the stones, invites those who return to find figs and kindness everywhere, in poems, at the mountaintops, the sea, From Mahmoud Darwish's words, melding odes with a guitar, almond blossoms with tears, a horse left alone, a candle resolute in the Galilee, to the breath in Amal Murqas's mellifluous voice, like a hand guiding poetry to even more loveliness. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zeina. We're really honored to have you with us here. We wish you all the best and a speedy recovery. And you're always welcome here. We hope to have you in person very soon. Next, we turn to Leena Aboutaleb, who's an Egyptian and Palestinian writer. Oops, sorry about this. Sorry, Leena. I didn't mean to. I'll start from the beginning. Leena Aboutaleb is an Egyptian and Palestinian writer who asks you to commit to the Palestinian liberation struggle. Her pamphlet, Expeditions of Projection, was released in 2023 in Vibe. Her short film, Oracle, is co-produced with Yusuf and Nahas, debuted this May in Venice. She's a Brooklyn Poet Fellow, a Kundiman Fellow, and a Tin House Scholar. You can read her work at leenaaboutaleb.onl. And truth be told, as soon as I found out that Leena was a contributor to this anthology, I figured this is the reason why I should do this event to get a chance to see Leena after years of not seeing her. When last time, probably Amman. So, with that, please welcome Leena, and we're honored to have you here with us.
Hi everyone, how are you guys? Okay, I always get a little bit of stage fright whenever I do these things, so if I stutter, I'm like sorry in advance. Thank you so much to Fadi and to the Jerusalem Fund for hosting us, and thank you so much to George and Noor for putting together this anthology. It's been 5 years of watching them commit to this, and so it's really exciting to see it alive. So I'm gonna start by reading a poem that is not mine. It's from Anis. I translated it last year for Logic's magazine. Let me find it. I bookmarked everything. Okay. I'm gonna read the English version, and it's called Graves Behind the Window. Graves along the way, graves without a headstone, chiseled into the earth as if they have existed since eternity. Graves like scars that never fade. Those silent and unending graves before my home there. Graves of children whose bodies were crushed by the bulldozers of death. Those disarrayed graves all along and over like blisters on the face. Above their head, a small sign writes, "Here lies a group of the unknowns." So this is what we call them now. What a word that pierces the back like a stab. What an obscene word, like the mark of disgrace. And now, you resemble them, O world. I want to open the doors to their unknowns. I release the birds around them, and for flowers to grow in their shade. I want their names to bloom in the symphonies of celebration, and to rush in joy once more down the staircase at the end of a school day in their race towards life. O children, who will you ask for milk from now? What breast will nourish all of these dry lips? I am tired, and I too am asking. Anis is still in Gaza with his family, so you can find their GoFundMe online to help contribute so that they can eventually exit when the borders are reopened, if they're reopened. The next poem I'm going to read is my own. It's called Line 3 Kit Kat, and if you're from Cairo, then you know that this is from the Cairo Metro. I want to walk the world in you, put orange rinds on the gas to eat, bring you pieces of me like an offering. I forgot my family in Alexandria, 30 years late. The fisherman catches the absolute end of the world. Our knees bumping on the train, a melting point. Half watching, half watched. I love surveillance. Your eyes like a gazelle. Home is in my hands, my knees bent on the corniche, falling into the half-up cement slabs. The seawater flinches and falls. The castle is locked, guarded. There is a new railway blackening the Nile in Zamalek. Evening is coming. We're under the sun, stalling time in a queue so as to officially let go for 600 Guinea. The sun is awash. Another Palestinian bumps into me at home. He lives in Port Said. We are all trying to go home. But here in the stillness, a not awake Friday morning, I blink slowly. I hear you. The rush of the wind, the silence of the trees, the hush of our cops, the decay of your hands. Love poem. We share a coffee on the metro. Every day is a date with myself. The trees of our neighborhood have hidden us for years. You are a soldier. I am in Alexandria, burying myself all over again. The next poem I'm going to read is called October, and it was published in Minsna. So shout out to George. I look for your gaze in the horrors of tomorrow. I dream you become a fida'i, scarf around my hips. I have slumbered in the belly of the beast too long, rejected presence and took flight. There is nothing they cannot do. They can never wake as us. They can never love as us. They can never be us. They can never be martyred as us. It is October, and suddenly my mother is full of words about prison. It is October, and suddenly I cannot look. It is October, and I am hidden in the night, wheat paste running down my forearms as if blood, as if justice, as if. I do not know what difference is made, or split, or incurred. The presence of remembrance. Whose eyes do you seek? Translation as underworld, underbody. What are the artifacts of dispossession? What is atonement? Empire outsourced. Let me kiss the fear. What comes first? Allah, Watan, Al-Malak. I am begging for a witness. When has language been such a burden? When has sight been such a loss? Every night I am embroiled in turmoil. I am at sword's length from the enemy. I am screaming in the middle of a building. I am tearing my way out of the abyss. I am pulling my fist, my foot, my boot back. Violence becomes me. I burn a passport. I hold secrets. I remember the movement of God. Are you scared? All I hear are the drones on the walls. Are you? Can you hear me still? I watch a city burn. Don't be scared of the fire. Its desire, the warmth. It is God's will. So who do you bow for? My aunt weaves tales of Uts, Nablus, Ariha. Cities crumbled, cities hungry, cities starving. Tell me about the country. There's no words left to say. What has been said is said. I emerge from the egg, a snake, mouth wide open for the kill. Thank you. And then I'm going to close out with this. This is a poem that I really love because it's all about my mom. And if you know me in real life, you know that I really love my mom. I break a mare of 3. My cats break even more. Evil eye, my dad whispers in my head. When my mother's wedding china crashes on the floor, she prays. Mirror images. I see you, see me, through the sea, blue Anital's yellow mountain. I see her mountain in Berlin and I cry. Arab apocalypse. I want to unravel my ghosts. I want to press their laundry and brew them sweet tea. I want them comfortable in my skin, crossing all the realms. How many thousands of years did it take so we could exist? A bomb silences the eons foretold. I am only an echo of my mother, filled with the brightness of her love. I exist because of my mother. I carry my mother's land for her. Domitable. Reflections are mirrored in reflections. So we are water, summer. So Ital says. 35. And all I think about is how we become our mothers. Reality cannot deal with itself, and so enters the urgency of the poet, the keepers. Ital says this summer. But I'm frightened. Let my labors move a stream, if not a sea. I have pulled the bells of revenge and become water. 75. All I have in my spine is an unwavering gaze. I am my mother's daughter, bint أمي, bint mama. In Berlin, the taxi driver spits out his coffee upon the understanding of truth, the dialect of body and nationality. But your Palestinian is perfect, yamma. I cry in Berlin, in Cairo, in Amman, in Salwa, in the end of time when I am called to witness my life. I am called as my mother's daughter. I am called as my mother, and I become Leena bint Tasrin. It is my mother who walks me, my mother who guides me. It is my mother I see in the expo marker and the kites, the sea and its love, the garden and its land. I did not know peasantry. But I wrapped Yama like wool around my body, as if she will keep me safe in this violence. Mirror, mirror, will you tell me when they will fall? Sword and neck, expo marker and kite, illusions and mere dust, fires and mountains. A land hostage on my throat, doused in gold. My mother picking stones from the river and sea. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for these readings, Lena. I'm honored to introduce Professor Sharif Al-Musa, a scholar, writer, and poet. His work has appeared in numerous journals, magazines, and more than a dozen anthologies. He co-edited Grape Leaves, A Century of Arab American Poetry, and authored the poetry collection Flooded Landscape. If I'm not mistaken, Professor Sharif, when you edited this anthology, there were only like a handful of Palestinian poets in America at the time, right? Yeah, exactly. So I'm leading to it. So please join me in welcoming Sharif onto the stage.
Thank you, Fadi, and thanks for the Jerusalem Fund. Uh, I'm happy to be here, and thank you all for coming now. It's 6:30. This is really dinner time, so it's a very precious time for you. Okay, as the co-editor of the first, actually, Arab American anthology poetry, Grape Leaves, it was, we titled it. Uh, I am, very grateful and actually heartened to see this new anthology by George and Noor. Because, I thought, I mean, I know there will be no end to anthologies, but this is a great anthology and it is much, wider and inclusive than ours because it has Palestinians from all over. In that one, we had 4 Palestinian poets, and in this one, we have a cornucopia of Palestinian poets. MashaAllah. Yeah. I'm happy to be in the anthology and happy to be here. Uh, I know I have a short attention span, and I know you have a short attention span. So I'll just read 2 poems. one from Gaza by a poet from Gaza who is not from the anthology, actually. This way, we extend the anthology, also go beyond the bounds of the anthology. Am I clear? Oh, okay. The poet, I don't know if you know her, she writes in Arabic, Hind Judah, her name. And I translated actually her poems and some other poets, Palestinian poets, for a journal of poetry. It's called Presence, a journal of Catholic poetry. But it's Catholic in the real sense, universal, not, you know, not just Catholic. Uh, this is how I read it because they publish my poems, and I know I'm not Catholic, but uh, if you want, I don't know how you feel about it. I can read it in Arabic also. Yeah, because the anthology, they made a point in the anthology to actually have poems in Arabic, and now I think the younger generation always makes a point of, including slipping Arabic words in their poems. And why not? Because I mean, you had T.S. Eliot and Ezra Pound were having all these Latin and Greek words which we don't know either. So why not Arabic, right? I mean, so uh, probably it's better first to read it in English so that you know what it says in Arabic, right? So I read it in English first and then in Arabic. What does it mean to be a poet in time of war? What does it mean to be a poet in time of war? It means to be apologetic, to show contrition before the burning trees and the birds that lost their nests, before the razed homes and the long cracks in the wastes of streets, before the ashen children, ashen, whether alive or dead, before the face of every mother, mournful or has been killed. What does it mean to be safe in war? It means to feel ashamed of being safe, of being warm, of your smile, of your sigh, of your cup of coffee, of having loved ones alive, of being full, of having clean water, of access to shower, of the mere accident of being alive. Oh my God, I don't wish to be a poet in time of war. She wrote this early in the war. I don't think she had any of these things that she would have been ashamed of. Yeah, these things are really hard to read about Gaza. I always find it too emotional. In Arabic, ماذا يعني أن تكون شاعرا في زمن الحرب؟ هذا يعني أن تعتذر، أن تكثر من الاعتذار إلى الأشجار المحترقة، إلى العصافير التي بلا أعشاش، إلى البيوت المسحوقة، إلى شقوق طويلة في خاصرة الشوارع، إلى الأطفال الشاحبين قبل الموت وبعده، إلى وجه كل أم حزينة أو مقتولة. ماذا يعني أن تكون آمنا في زمن الحرب يعني أن تخجل من ابتسامتك، من دفئك، من ثيابك النظيفة، من ساعات مللك، من تثاؤبك، من فنجان قهوتك، من أحبائك الأحياء، من شبعك، من الماء المتاح، من الماء النظيف، من قدرتك على الاستحمام، ومن المصادفة أنك ما زلت حيا. يا إلهي، لا أريد أن أكون شاعرة في زمن الحرب. I will also actually use Hind Judah to justify reading my poem in the anthology. She was in an interview to describe Gaza in 10 years from now. One of the things she said, Gaza will live, will find, we will fill it anew with poetry and music and life. I know Gaza will feel the sorrow day by day, will weep for long, because the pain this time is more cruel and more dehumanizing than the other times. But we will rebuild the house and factories and school. Gaza deserves to live like other places, free as it was created. As Darwish also said, we have only one choice, to be or to be. And my poem is, oops, I hope it is here. Well, it is in the anthology anyway. Yeah, it's called Drawings. It's about how to build a house. You know, I lived in many places, and so I have all these kind of ideas for how a house should be in my head. But one of the words, the phrases that you know, when I really wrote it, suddenly it hit me. Why am I saying this in while I'm writing a poem about building? And this phrase says, or line, it says, if there is no war and you live in it. I mean, why am I thinking of war? Because I became a refugee myself at the age of 1, and I saw every war since then. And so our life is really always got interrupted by war, and you expect that it would be interrupted by war. So it just enters into your consciousness without being conscious of it, you know. Okay. Drawings. If you build the house, keep it small, and the world large. Place it on a street merging with wider avenues. Have the front face the river, if possible, and the back the twilight. Install in the ceiling the skylight of Horus for you to witness the auspices. Dig a well as deep as memory, as the mind can descend without being seized by vertigo. Keep a few things light as in travel, enough to perform the daily rituals, to warm the space between you, to make you feel sturdy. If there is no war and you live in it, the house will stand. The great sound you will hear is thunder resonating through the foundations. resonating with ancient time, with the joy of the sky. The western wind will wash the walls with cooling rain, and the northern wind will change everyone's color. There is a line in Arabic that says, "والهوى الشمالي غير اللون" from a song. So, it, for some reason, it does. The secrets of the house will blow with the breath of the sizzling garlic. Do not lock the door of the parents' room after they depart. They will still hear the footfalls of the guests from miles away and embrace everyone coming and leaving under the arched gate with a triumphant air. The children will be as happy as the pink bricks in the facade. The children will be happy as the pink bricks in the facade, geraniums in the windows, and birds on the rooftop until they grow up and breed their own houses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharif. We'll now, last but not least, we are honored to have Fargo with us here. Fargo Tbakhi is a Palestinian performance artist and the author of Terror Counter, published by Deep Vellum in 2025. You can find more about Fargo at fargotbakhi.com. Thank you so much, Fargo. Please join me in welcoming him.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Fadi. Thank you, George and Noor and Zeina and Leena and Sharif. I'm going to read two poems, one by Ibrahim Nasrallah, translated by Huda Fakhreddin, and one by myself. And I'm going to read these two poems because paired together, they offer a kind of what I might call like a dialectical tension that I'm feeling right now between, on the one hand, despair, which I find valuable and I think it's important, and on the other, a kind of commitment to the future, to a belief in the future, and to an insistence on what that future could be. But I think we need both of these things. I think we need to feel the failure and the sense of hopelessness in order to reaffirm our commitment to something else. So this is Palestinian by Ibrahim Nasrallah, translated by Huda Fakhreddin. I was silent and nothing came of it. I spoke and nothing came of it. I cursed, I apologized, and nothing came of it. I was busy. I pretended to be busy and nothing. I sat, I walked, I ran, I shivered and I warmed up. Nothing. I was parched until I cracked. I drank until I drowned, and nothing came of it. I crumbled like a fetus, like the father, the siblings, and the mother. I was then gathered in a shroud made of old curtains, and nothing came of it. I stumbled more than I could stand, but then I stood up, and nothing came of it. I prayed until, like a prophet, I became a verse in a holy book. I rode until I reached hell. I beseeched and begged, and nothing. I raged, I calmed, I remembered what was once distant, and I forgot what was always close. I befriended a monster, and I fought a monster. I died young, and sometimes survived. In both times I grew old from all that I had seen, but nothing came of it. I charged, I withdrew, I fought the wind when it blew and reconciled with the waves. When I rose and raged among the horses, my heart was a horse. In the night, my heart was a night, and nothing came of it. I ate, I hungered, I vomited, and nothing came of it. I embraced my shadow, and I chastised it, and then I chastised myself. I greeted a woman lost in the streets. I fought with a man, and his smile nearby, and with a bird that sang briefly in the garden, and nothing came of it. I closed all the windows in my house, and opened them. I wrote words on death when it is merciful, death when it is futile, death when it is hell, death when it is the only way, at last, death when it is gentle and light, death when it is heavy, heavy and dark, and nothing came of it. I wrote about the river and the sea, about tomorrow and the sun, and nothing came of it. I wrote about oppression and depravity, purity too. I slept without a bite of bread. I dreamt without dreams. I woke up not missing my hands or feet or reflection in the mirror or the thing I call my soul. I died and lived. I lit myself on fire. I put myself out with my own ashes, and nothing came of it. I am all these elements, O God, fire, earth, wind, and water. Their fifth is a pain that blind songs can't see. Their sixth is this immense loneliness, and their seventh, since my slaughter, is blood. When I burned, I inhabited the letters of my free name like a butterfly. Palestine. When my roof was suddenly blown off into the sky, and with it a wall, a window, and the youngest of my children, I gathered myself in the G and the A and the Z and the A. I became Gaza. 1,000 warplanes circled and hit me. I collapsed and collapsed again, and then rose in a scream. I called out, but nothing came of it. Nothing came of it. Nothing came of it. I lost faith and believed. Lost faith and believed again, and lost faith and believed, and nothing came of it. Nothing came of it. And the filthy world asks me, all this, what of it? Palestine is a futurism, prophecies, cruising Jerusalem. Miracle makers, we touch heaven with our toes. Heaven looks like us. We build our own futures. We build them to look like us. No soft power over us. Radically, we define what it means to be us. Our slingshots are a collectivism. Our fishnets are a Nostradamus. Return is a future, is a past. Past is a future we return to. Sunspot tasters, we rhizome. Science resistors, we hex the world. Only the end of the world for us. Only the biggest us we can build. In the land of no states, I will lick your eyeballs. In the sleep of no documents, I will kiss your iris. The soil retains its ideologies. The soil turns them into batatas. City wall, lean against, I stroke your stubble. Tunnel walkers, we dissolve any military, an undeclared end to all declarations. The sun has set on the British Empire, on the American Empire, on the empire of Goldman Sachs, on the empire of military contractors, on the empire of eviction enforcers, on the empire of hunger consultants, on the empire of securitization, on the empire of possibility eaters. Inside a poem, we found a tunnel. Inside the tunnel we found ourselves. We liked our taste. We tasted our collectivism. We remembered the land was already a Marxism. We remembered our names and the art of making new ones. Lay down your arms, and I will lay with them. Make me the strings of a gutted piano. I will writhe and make the song of our only nation. Return is an ontological dance step. The birds are teaching us to stay. Future is a dirty patata every day. We are saying no to the things that keep us apart. Every day we are saying no to enclosure. Every day we are cruising Jerusalem. Every day Jerusalem is cruising us back. Palestine is a futurism. Futurism is an expansiveness of understanding. Futurism is a demolition of monuments. Futurism, a rioting cactus. Palestine, a relation of loveliness. Futurism is a Palestine. Palestine is a system of care. Care is a futurism of hands. Futurism is a Palestine. Palestine is already here. Palestine is already everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our speed readers today, and we'll now turn to a Q&A session. George and I will be seated up front. If there are questions for the other speakers, then we will just get all of the chairs here and have a collective Q&A session. A mic will be passed around for the Q&A. It's not for us in the room. I'm sure everyone can hear fine. It's for our live audience members. So we just kindly ask that you ask your question into the microphone. And yeah, thank you. Okay, yours is working. So before we turn to the audience, I just wanted to start off with a question for you, George, and then we can go from there. You know, as co-editor, could you tell us a little bit about the title, the book cover? I know we touched upon it a little bit, and the process of composing a global anthology of Palestinian poetry. How did you choose these poets, and why did you include the poems that are in this anthology of theirs?
Oof,
There's a lot.
that's
I
a
know.
lot. Oh my God. So I feel like with titling poetry books, it's instinct over like thought, if that makes sense. Like every poetry book I've ever written, or chapbook or poetry project, I've always just known it when I saw it. And when Noor and I were, doing the process and we were finalizing the list of poems and everything, we combed the whole book through and looked for, okay, what are individual lines of poems that we can use as a title? And both of us, the only one, we were just like, we saw it and we just couldn't unsee it. Heaven looks like us. Um, and I think something about, and I speak about this in the intro a bit, the inversion of, what is like the relationship of a collective to an idea of like paradise, of liberation, of utopia, dare I say. And it's actually, I love that the like line of Fargo's inverts the logic of like, no, we don't project ourselves onto heaven. Heaven itself should look like us. We're dragging it back, we're down to earth, etc., so to speak. And there's something about that logic that really just speaks to the whole of, I think, what Noor and I were trying to do with the anthology, but also, like, heaven looks like us. Heaven is looking, heaven is watching. So I'm also just thinking about looking and surveillance and look, our comrade Salma Sharif's amazing book of poetry. And anywho, there's a lot of multiplicities. And the cover art is by Jumana Mana, amazing Palestinian artist, and her cleaning collage series. And again, another, we wanted something, I guess that I will say about why this was another, again, instinct. We just loved this and instantly fell in love. We wanted something abstract. We didn't want, there's a lot of, we didn't want to just be like yet another Palestine anthology with like insert figural nationalistic symbolic iconography like most 99% of other Palestinian anthologies are. We wanted something a little bit different. Also something that felt on theme, something that felt like it was cohesive with the title as well, because I looked at this and I immediately thought about the Fargo poetry line. And something about the, and so Kamal Bulata actually was one of the folks that came up because we're like another just incredible Palestinian artist who worked in an abstraction mode. And then we were like, oh, all of the ones that we liked of his for this felt like, because he has a Heaven Ascension series, it's very beautiful, but it's been used in so many other book covers. And so we're like, oh. And so the Jumana piece, she's an amazing Palestinian filmmaker and installation artist. She's just like, look up her work. She's just so incredible and was super amazing to work with for this. Yeah, I can say more about process with folks, but yeah, I think we answered the first questions.
Sure. Thank you for that, George. I guess if we could turn to the other questions later. Are there any questions from the audience who'd like to start us off? Yeah. Thank you, Lucas. By the way, Lucas was one of our former interns from last semester, so we're so honored to have you back.
Pleasure's all mine. So Leena mentioned that you'd been working on this anthology. You and Noor had been working on it for 5 years. I don't know if that's an exact number, but I'm curious, what was the genesis of this project and how did the project evolve over time? And especially after October 2023 and the start of the escalated genocide in Gaza, how did that impact this project? How did that change the way you and Noor thought about compilation, about selection, about organization, about all the things?
Do you want to take multiple questions or answer one at
I
a
mean,
time?
that's a great, I'll answer that one.
Okay.
That's a lovely question. It was not an exaggeration. We did start 2020. It was actually kind of a underwhelming origin story, because Haymarket has this ongoing Breakbeats Poets series, and they were like, oh, and we did one for like Black authors, Black women authors. We did one for like Muslim, queer, and non-men authors. We did one for Latinx authors. Like, we want a Palestinian one. So when Haymarket approached Noor about her first book, they were like, oh, and also let's tack this onto your contract of also doing an anthology. And then Noor was like, holy shit, I needed a co-editor. George called me up one day, like, George, I need your help. And I was like, fuck yes, this is what I've been waiting for. And jumped on. So just thanks to Noor for bringing me on. And I mean, we had to live multiple lives almost through this process. It was insane. Because it emerged during lockdown. And so for a lot of it, me, Fargo, and Noor had this like clowny little group chat where we would talk and, have like semi-weekly check-ins with each other through COVID lockdown. And for me and Fargo, it kind of produced a like play that we are now producing. For me and Noor, it produces anthology. And so in a way, it was just like the relations. It was just like a natural, oh, who am I in relation with, and how can I continue making art with the people I'm with? And that was really the process. Like, it's like me and Noor just felt, I don't know, like this. We were friends before this, but afterwards we felt like siblings almost because we were calling each other every week. up, both of us work or are in school full time. So we were doing this in the margins of our lives. Like we would start our calls at like 9 p.m. and it would go like way past midnight and every single week. And so it was just like a labor of love, and it turned into almost like, for the open submission process, we just wanted to just reach as many people as possible. So that was one mode. For some of them, like, the Halalians, the Fadi Judah types, like they were like, okay, we're not going to send a submission. You're going to read our entire body of work and make a selection of just what makes most sense for the anthology. And so it was just really beautiful getting, like, we just had like, one or two poets a week, and we just like reading all of Samuel Qasim's later work, because we were like 2000 onwards. So we're like, cool, what was he writing post 2000? Reading Darwish's later work, which hot take, his later work is like my favorite of his poetry, actually, his post 2000 work. And he has this kind of existential, dreary, dreadful, like really just, again, dialectically and rigorously like reckoning with dread and how that relates to futurity. And yeah, Why Did You Leave the Horse Alone onwards is like my favorite like era of Darwish, is my weird hot take, which people might disagree with, but it was beautiful, and it was just, again, like it felt like a little book club, and every week we would just read, these books by our community, and we just come together and find, okay, where are the living poets, like that we already selected, where are the holes, where do we need more, where can our ancestor poets fill in gaps, or articulate different historical threads. Like one of the other, Taha Muhammad Ali, like was like the cutoff for, like he was like not quite in the 2000 onwards kind of constraint we just set for ourselves for sanity. And then we're like, great, but we'll honor him here with the Najwan Darwish dedication to him, for example. So there are ways where it's like, even if we didn't, like if we couldn't include a poet from the time constraint reasons or whatever, we were like, here's a way of including as many as possible by name. And yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Take another former intern of ours. Slay, thank you.
Thank you so much. I wanted to ask you about how hard was it to work with the diaspora, and how hard, especially a fragmented diaspora like Palestinians. You talked a little bit about sort of the structure, but I feel like we often say that the Nakba is what connects the living memory of the Nakba, be it you grew up in Palestine or you have it from your grandparents. What was the one thing that you found across this diaspora, and what was something that you struggled with in working with Palestinian diaspora?
I think like that's a fantastic question. I think that the like resisting what it means to write the Palestinian poem or whatever, or what it means for a poem to be Palestinian, again, kind of like a similar to our cover art choice, we were like, what use is a poem in English that is just like historical facts about the Nakba with line breaks? Like truly, like who is that for? Like, again, I'm trying not to ask this like sounding judgy or anything, because like I too was once a diaspora poet who wrote the cheesy and now I am the olive tree teehee kind of poem or whatever, right? And but I think it's a conversation I started with Leila Abdulrazak in 2019 when we were working on the chapbook together, and she was just saying, like, what is American use of these very Palestinian symbols really mean, and what does that really do for us as a community? And who is that for? It feels like instead of like reclaiming or rigorously like engaging with them, we're just replicating them for a white audience and just explaining our Palestinianness in a way that's just digestible to them. And one of the poems, Jessica Bougattis' Litany for My Father, I included it in this anthology because she put one version of it out on LitHub in 2018 in a folio we were in together on a Nakba memorial folio, and it was like 8 times as long. And it was one of those, like, again, I'm explaining a lot of Palestinian things. I'm explaining my father's trajectory, blah, 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 the Nakba. And then when she practically rewrote the whole poem for her book, Strip, which came out in 2020. And when Fadi Judah edited it, he was like, what would this poem be if you didn't have to explain the Nakba to a white audience? and then she's just left with this very small, very incisive poem that feels honestly more Palestinian than this long-winded let me explain and justify my existence to you kind of thing. And so there's every poem in this has a kind of story like that, and that kind of and and most of the anthology's like structure was set before October 7th, when we were corresponding with Rafat, and like he signed a contributor contract. He was, it's like non-metaphor. Like when we read "If I Must Die," and he didn't even write it even close to October. He wrote it in 2014. And so there's non-metaphorical stakes of the poems. Like all of a sudden, post October 7th, for some of us, became so much more non-metaphorical. They just and it and I think everyone in diaspora had very different Palestine the metaphor becoming Palestine not the metaphor experiences. And maybe that difference actually was the interesting or complicating thing. To what extent was my idea of Palestine the metaphor shattered by editing this as a very American Palestinian versus, also, Yahya Ashur, who's one of our living Ghazawi poets in the anthology. Me and him have had extensive conversations. When we think Palestinian literature, we think like Al-Quds, we think Ramallah, we think of poets in Haifa. Gaza is very marginal within even our own Palestinian internal memory in poetry especially. But yeah, he argues in literature broadly. And then now in a weird way, we're seeing all these weird, almost like saviorist type, let's pull poets out of Gaza and like translate them and like put them in English and then just like shove them into white faces. And again, like what use is this work to people who are illiterate and cannot understand that we're human? Like what use is that? And so anywho, sorry, I'm getting emotional, but it's just one of those things where it's like, how do we handle Gaza with care? And that's a hard question. And I think that's a question that should break us, and and it has. And then yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. We have time maybe for one or two more questions. For the audience members here, please ask something. We don't want to make it look like we planted our former interns to engage the audience.
Work. Hi. Next projects. Maybe we could each say, I want to hear, actually, I want to hear more about y'all's projects and my I'm okay. It's a live stream, so I shouldn't say this out loud, but we haven't announced the anthology yet. Okay, cool, it's a live stream, whatever. With my good friend Hannah Mushabek at Interlink Books, we are co-editing a queer Palestine anthology that we are tentatively titling The Homosexual Intifada. And it'll be, inshallah, coming out next year. Yeah, it's for safety reasons of especially the folks contributors based in Palestine. We've been pretty secret about it and how we're handling anonymity and pseudonymity, et cetera, keeping folks safe. And also we don't want to get like funny story, our co-editor, she's a children's book writer, and there was an insane conservative nuthead wrote some dox this person type, Fox News piece about her work. And it's like a Palestinian children's book with a fart on the fourth page. It's like harmless. It's very, and then they're just like, she's indoctrinating the youth. And unfortunately, the writing is good, so the youth will fall for it. And she's leading the homosexual intifada. And so we're kind of flipping that on its head a little bit and shoving it back in them. Like, yes, actually, we mean intifada. We mean queer as in free Palestine, as in end empire, as in burn it to the ground. I would love to hear about y'all's projects, especially because we have a amazing new book from Fargo that's coming out in like less than a month now.
Yes, my first collection of poems comes out, in less than a month. So towards the end of June, from Deep Vellum, and so that's sort of what I'm going to take some time to do for the next few months, as well as I mostly, in addition to poetry, I make performance in various forms, and so there are a few things coming up that I'll be, sharing some shows at. But yeah.
Hi. What I'm doing is I have my debut manuscript, and I'm looking for it to be housed with the press. It's called Thalasia, and it's about my brother.
Anyone on the live stream, if you have powerful relations in the poetry world, literally Leena Aboutaleb is one of the I'm trying not to make eye contact and get emotional. I mean it very non-metaphorically when I say Leena Aboutaleb is one of the most brilliant and groundbreaking poets alive right now. And yeah. Anywho.
A long time ago, I was with a Palestinian friend who teaches at Wizait, without names, I'm not going to mention his name. And we had an American also academic, and he asked him, "What are you working on?" He said, "How come you are always ask us about working on something? Can't you just be sitting there?" Yeah. So I guess since you asked, I happen to be working. In terms of poetry, actually, I have really this manuscript that has been sitting, in cyberspace on my computer for a long time. But I'm really lazy about sending it out. And, you have to go send it. It used to be that a publisher would publish your poem. Now it is like a competition, and you receive a prize. If you look at the biographies of poets, and this won this prize from, they are all publishing houses, and but I really, I'm not into kind of keep sending, and so I'm waiting for someone at one point to ask me, or just have it published posthumously, after it's
No.
actually we are more interested in people who die, actually.
No,
because they
it's
don't
so
threaten
true.
us, they are dead. But
It's so
there are
true.
all kinds of despite of all the stuff, among the left, and there is a lot of rivalry and competition and all that stuff. So it is actually, it's better to be remembered after you die. You don't even know which is.
But
But in any case, so I have that. But I'm also, as you said, I'm a scholar. So I have written like 2 articles on Gaza during this war, and I wrote 2 poems. But I also just finished an article about a film, a Palestinian film, a documentary about a man who leaves his family in the camp to actually tend his land, because if he doesn't, he will be expelled from it. And which he does at the end, of course, as you might expect. So I'm doing that. And so I'll be writing poems and, prose, because I think I wrote one time an article that has prose and poetry and autobiography. And I discovered through it the shortcomings of each, basically. So, it's maybe not very good in this world, which
No.
likes, straightforward.
That sounds much more interesting than most academic work in the West, honestly. So
Yeah. So that's what. But I wanted to ask you. Actually, somehow the title struck me. From the beginning, and I couldn't really just not forget it. Because more than one Palestinian book is titled, After the Last Sky, which was a poem by Darwish, and then
Edward Said.
and then Edward Said took it to be the title of a book. So it seems like this is part of the heritage. Of course, I mean,
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, we are a small place, the Earth, and it's easy to say heaven, like where
Mm,
is heaven? Really, there is no
yeah,
heaven. But in any case,
yeah.
what struck me at the beginning, I'm going, to ask you this really frankly, doesn't it sound human centric?
Mm,
That it is the sky looks like us.
mm-hmm.
That's my kind of
Absolutely.
my concern.
100%.
Yeah.
I agree. I guess my question to that question does heaven need to be in the sky? Is my question, and where is vertical? I mean, not to get too politics of verticality, A.L. Wiseman on it, but um, where what is our relationship to verticality and they're kind of metaphorically there in authority. And does heaven need to be skyward, I guess? And I think that the cover also has a brilliance about it because the logic of the collage is very sea-like, very river-like, but if you look at each individual piece, it's very sky-like. And so I think that also, you look into the sky and see a river and a sea. I think that that kind of, again, with the heaven looks like us. Like, what if heaven was a river and a sea, from a river and to a sea, and from every river to every sea? Like I'm wondering about materiality. I'm wondering about, again, groundedness and on the earth. Not to be too, oh my God, earth, air, wind, fire about it, but like I guess my I almost didn't think human as much as just Earth, with all of that. But I love this question, and I love that also just complication too of like, yeah, there is a kind of humanness to heaven looks like us, and I also think something beautiful about Fargo's poem that reading Cruising Jerusalem in the Jerusalem Fund feels like so amazing. But whenever I tried with me and Fargo's collaboration and writing poems together, I also tried writing these into this Palestine as a futurism mode, and I noticed I was very in jams. Like my lines would, break a lot. Whereas in Fargo's poems, there's a tendency for all the lines to be very self-contained. And I think there's kind of a manifesto-esque-ness to the self-containedness. And what if we take one line and just let it live somewhere? Let that one line in this poem have a life of its own, have a performance of its own every time. I've heard Fargo read this now at least 4 times, and every time it's like different. And like it felt like kind of like I was at a punk show when you read it at the Arab American Museum, versus hearing you in your gallery. It felt very spacious and very solemn and low, but now it felt very high in a way that I just, and so I think that again, that metaphor is kind of like an anthology is a living, breathing object. Anthology means collection of flowers etymologically. These are not dead things. These are things that live, that are gifted, that are circulated, that have everyone takes their own thing from it. And I think that heaven looks like us has enough of that kind of like, you know, containedness and abstraction to float and mean a million different things to a million different people. So I love that. I love this kind of complication with it, actually. That makes me only love the title more in a weird way. Sorry, I'm just yapping now.
No, I think this is a wonderful way to close this event. We're so grateful for everyone for sticking by. I guess it's drier in here than outside. It's quite the storm here, so we're extremely grateful for you to come out here during this storm. To all of our live audience members joining us, thank you so much. Before I close, I think it's we're honored that to host this book launch of Heaven Looks Like Us. A mutual friend 5 years ago of ours asked me if I wanted to contribute to this anthology, and unfortunately, I'm not versed in lyrics, so I would have actually made this would have it would have been a lesser project, let's say, if mine was in it. But the flip side is that I'm honored that I get to host it here and be one of the first in DC to bring you for this book launch. We're gonna have a book signing right now after this. The books will be up for sale at cost price. Before we come to a close, last thing I'll say, I want to thank my incredible team, Duna, Tare, and our new intern, Sophie, for joining us. And the last note is that one of our prospective interns, Serene Haddad, is actually has her diploma being withheld from her now from Virginia Commonwealth University for organizing a peaceful demonstration for Palestine, actually a sit-in on college campus at Virginia Commonwealth University. So for our audience here and the ones online, we urge you to please write VCU and demand that Serene and the other students who've had their diplomas withheld be immediately instated for this unjust act. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and thank you for staying this long. We're so honored. Thank you.